Drake Lindsay going to be the starting quarterback in 2025 as the Golden Gophers are going to be turning over a little bit of the roster, but overall, they are going to have a really solid team. Lindsay is young as a redshirt freshman, but projected to be one of the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten over the course of his career. And he'll have a pretty easy start to his career. First up is Buffalo at home. Minnesota shouldn't really have any troubles there. Same thing with Northwestern State. They'll move to 2-0 heading on the road to California. Now, Cal has had a lot of players transfer out, including their star running back, Jaden Ott, who is now an Oklahoma Sooner. And they did bring in Devin Brown to compete for the starting quarterback job, but I really don't think it's going to be enough. Minnesota is returning a lot of guys on defense. They're going to be a really solid team overall. They are more talented than Cal, and even though they're on the road, we like the Golden Gophers to win this non-conference game to move to 3-0 heading into Big Ten play.
And to kick off Big Ten play, they will host Rutgers. Rutgers is a very young team, hasn't seen a ton of success, but Greg Schiano has brought this program to a lot more relevance than they used to be. Definitely more competitive than we have seen. I believe it might have been last season or the season prior. They actually had Ohio State on the ropes a little bit before the Buckeyes pulled away. So Rutgers is in a very good spot. I just don't think they will be able to compete with the experience that Minnesota has at its skill positions. Yes, Drake Lindsay is going to be in his first full season as the starting quarterback, but with Darius Taylor back as the starting running back, who is projected to be a top 100 player in college football next season, along with a secondary that is returning a top 25 player in safety Koi Perch. This Minnesota defense is going to be pretty solid and going to give Drake Lindsay plenty of opportunities to stay in the game. And I think that's going to be the ultimate reason why Minnesota is going to be successful this season. They're going to kick off Big Ten play with a win over Rutgers before a tough road game against the defending national champs in Ohio State. Really, this is just a matter of Ohio State is going to be the better team basically at every single position. Yes, they have to bring in a new quarterback this season, whether that is Julian Sayin or Lincoln Keenels, but they have Jeremiah Smith, who is arguably the best offensive player in college football. They have Caleb Downs, who is arguably the best defensive player in college football. Really, everything just points that Ohio State is going to win this game, especially at the shoe. Minnesota might give them a run for their money and make it a little bit closer than some people are expecting. But at the end of the day, the Buckeyes will come out on top and drop the Golden Gophers to 4-1.
Yeah, I think Minnesota has a chance to be really good this year, but just not on the same level as those top teams in the country like Ohio State. They have a really easy bounce back game, though, against Purdue. The Boilermakers really not going to be very good again this season. They don't have that many great players at all. And the one that they did have, Max Clare, their tight end, transferred away. So Purdue's going to struggle quite a bit, and I think that they will lose that game to Minnesota pretty handedly. Then it's Nebraska, and the Cornhuskers are returning Dylan Raiola at quarterback, and I think he's going to be a really solid quarterback for them, especially compared to some of the worst quarterbacks in the Big Ten. That doesn't sound weird. That sounds weird. I think he's going to be a really solid quarterback for them. But this game, it really could go either way. The fact that Minnesota has it at home definitely gives them a little bit of an advantage. I would almost say that Minnesota as a whole is a little bit better than Nebraska. I think they're actually going to win this game as well, which might surprise some people.
Yeah, it definitely is going to be a competitive game. I think the home field advantage will carry a little bit of weight here. In addition to the fact that Minnesota does have a transfer wide receiver coming in from Nebraska in Malachi Coleman, who is 6'5", 195. He can be an absolute monster of a weapon for Drake Lindsay if he can show some growth in the red zone, because if you have that big of a body, you should be looking at him a lot once you get in the red zone, but he has had some struggles at Nebraska with it. But definitely could go either way here. But I think for right now, Minnesota is going to be a slightly more complete team here. Following week, is on the road against Iowa. Iowa's bringing in Mark Gronowski to be the starting quarterback from South Dakota State. We saw Iowa have some improvements offensively compared to 2 years ago when they were one of the worst offenses in all of college football. Defense is still looking pretty good. Minnesota is still going to be the better team overall, but I think with the home field advantage, the Hawkeyes are going to be able to pull off an upset here and beat the Golden Gophers, dropping them to 6-2. Again, doesn't necessarily mean Iowa is the better team. I just think Iowa will be due for a huge Big Ten win, and Minnesota will have one loss here that is to a team that we don't necessarily think is better than them.
Yeah, I mean, the reality of college football is that upsets do happen, and our goal is to find as many of those as we can before the season even starts. The next game also has some upset potential going against Michigan State. Aiden Childs returning at the quarterback position, and he has a lot of talent. He's a solid dual threat quarterback, and I think he really can keep Michigan State in a lot of these games that they're going to play against some of the top teams in the conference. But he has also been very prone to big mistakes, and it's really a 50-50 on what you're going to get for each game. Michigan State, for that reason, has a very high ceiling and a very low floor this season. But overall, Minnesota a little bit more talented. I do believe that they will win this game and go to 7-2.
And like Jonah was saying, Aiden Childs did show some raw athleticism that has a ceiling sky high, but is prone to turning the ball over. And like I was saying earlier, this Minnesota secondary is going to be really, really good next year. So they'll be able to force Aiden Childs into some turnovers, especially if they're able to lock down his number one target in Nick Marsh coming off an incredible freshman season. So Michigan State, like we were saying, does have a chance, but I think with the loss they have defensively, Minnesota is going to be the better team here.
After the bye week, a road trip to Eugene to face the Oregon Ducks. Now, Oregon is going to be a really good team once again this season, but they have a few more question marks than they did last year. Dante Moore going to be the starting quarterback, and with Dan Lanning as the head coach, you know they're going to have a really solid offense. But the question is whether or not Dante Moore is actually up to the task. That's something that we haven't seen proof of yet, but this Oregon home field advantage is ridiculously good. We saw them beat Ohio State at home last year, which makes me think that teams like Minnesota don't really have much of a chance of pulling off an upset on the road against Oregon. The Ducks defend the home turf once again this season.
And then to close out the season, they have two pretty easy games, starting with a road trip to Northwestern. Northwestern still does not have a football stadium. They are playing on the shores of Lake Michigan. And this Northwestern team isn't going to be very successful. There's really no one on the team to write home about. They're kind of in the same boat as Purdue. I really don't expect them to put up much of a fight here. If you want to say the home field advantage is the weather of playing a November, almost December football game on Lake Michigan, you're playing Minnesota. They have played in far worse conditions. Minnesota will move to 8-3 here. And then it is the rivalry game against Wisconsin, the battle for the Paul Bunyan axe. And Wisconsin has one of the most difficult schedules in all of college football next year. Definitely the most difficult in the Big Ten, and culminating against this Minnesota team that is been on a roll for the most part, only losing one game in a questionable manner in our prediction, and that's to Iowa. But then still think I think they can compete in the Ohio State and Oregon game. They will be battle tested, and whatever Wisconsin can throw at them after likely finishing well below 500. I really don't think Wisconsin will be able to put up much of a chance, especially on the road against Minnesota. The Golden Gophers will have the Paul Bunyan axe and finish the season 9-3.
Our way too early projection was 7.4 wins, 8-4 overall. We've improved that prediction to 9-3, and the projection came up with it to 8.1 wins, 5.4 and 3.6 in the Big Ten. The floor for the Golden Gophers this year going to be 6-6. I do think there is some room to lose a decent amount of Big Ten games. It's not an easy conference to play in, but the ceiling going to be at 10-2. I don't see them winning at Ohio State or Oregon, although they can make those games close. So I think the best case scenario for Minnesota is going to be 10-2 this season. So thank you guys for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our other schedule prediction videos, and we will see you in the next one.